Greetings again. My name is Jesse. This is the first video that I'm going to do on the psychological project, which I'm going to give the courses that an individual could take in a 4-year degree plan, only psychological courses. So individuals will have information and be able to use that information to help themselves. The goal is to educate, but also to empower people with education so they're able to deal with their challenges, with their pain and their suffering. And I have decided that the first course is a course on psychological growth and development. So this is session 1. Again, I'm Jesse. I read through the chapter and I fixed these tiles on PowerPoint, and I'm hoping that are in order. They don't appear to be in order. I'm going to jump to the end here and see how I should have checked that first. Okay, so I'm just looking through it. Now, it really doesn't matter how the information organized. All that matters is what I do with the information. So I go to the second tile, development and growth, just to give you an overview. Developmental psychology is the study of the individual as they're moving from day one into their adult years, throughout the lifespan, with the emphasis on the biological, the psychological, and the social. Okay, so we move into the first time, way to study people, and the understanding, the scientific understanding, as far as the developing person, comes from studying people, and there's different ways to study people. In science, it's what we call the scientific method. Okay, which here I put a note that is the general scientific procedural method of research. And there's okay, and the first thing that you will do in this scientific method, if you were going to sit down and do a research paper on studying human psychology, you can use this method in biology, you can use this method in chemistry. Okay, the first thing is you would formulate a general question. For example, do cell phones cause cancer? Okay. After you think about it for a while, okay, you develop a hypothesis. Okay, and I didn't do any examples because this is basically your generic understanding. The first chapter that I read in the book of developmental psychology was introduction, okay, and it was very generic. So you go from formulate a general question, develop a hypothesis, okay, something like 5 hours of exposure to electromagnetic energy from a cell phone will cause cancer in a human ear. Okay, you can get to genetic. And then you would test the hypothesis, and you can do this by, one is, exposing the human ear to 5 hours on a cell phone, and then seeing if people do develop cancer. Okay, or you can put out an announcement in the newspaper that you're looking for people who use their cell phones for more than 5 hours, and then you can ask questions about whether they have cancer. After you've done your test, okay, you draw a conclusion, okay, whether yes or no. And from drawing your conclusion, that's where you make your findings available. Again, this is just a generic introduction, and I thought it was important because when you're looking at science, science is structured. Okay? And if you were going to study any level of human psychology, okay, again, this procedure can be used in other sciences, but in psychology, if you were going to do it, you would be using these steps. Okay? And again, this is just a general introduction, first chapter, nothing that great. Ways to study people. You can go to a park and observe people as they interact, okay, in their natural environment. That would be called naturalistic observation, okay. And there are problems because from a distance, when you're not talking to people, you're not questioning, they're not answering your questions, you don't have, there's no way that you can tell, okay, what contributed to the behavior, okay. And just because you think that one thing contributes to behavior, it may not be. Okay, there may be a correlation, but a correlation does not indicate causation. And this really goes back to the first tile, okay, where where you're drawing your conclusions. You may see a relationship, but the relationship doesn't necessarily mean that cell phones or whatever your hypothesis is actually correct. The relationship does not indicate, okay, I'm going to bring that tile back up again. The relationship does not indicate causation, okay? But that's just when you're studying people, one form is naturalistic observation. Another way is an experiment, okay? Like I said, you can bring people to a laboratory, solicit participants, and then test them, by exposing them to whatever it is you believe it can cause a particular psychological, well, we can call it illness or okay. So when you are choosing your participants in an experiment, okay, it's a good idea to have a variety of participants, different ages, genders, races, socioeconomic status, okay? And the reason being is that if you, Freud got in trouble because he basically did his work, his research, he came to his conclusions from women who had hysteria because of their family life, and they were rich women, like France. So his participants in the research study, excuse me, were, very narrow. So you want to have a broad section of people, okay, because that way you're able to say that what you have studied and what your study says applies to a large amount of people across, cultures, nations. Okay. Of course, you never harm the person. They were doing studies where they were scaring children. They would bring out a cute little bunny rabbit, and then they would slam a metal pipe against the floor, and the child would become scared of bunny rabbits. You're harming the person when you're doing something like that. Okay. Another way to study people is just questionnaires. You may have participated in a questionnaire. Somebody in the street stopped you, asked you 10 questions, 15 questions. With the internet, there's a lot of people taking surveys on the internet, and that's another way to study people. You'll notice there's very little organization here. As I'm working through it, I'm trying to get it organized. But here, an experiment is a way to study people. One of the things to keep in mind in your experiment is how you choose your participants. Okay, and again, we're doing a general overview. Specifics, the 10th, book, or as I'm going to call it, semester course, is when really gets into detail. Okay, so you got the experiment as a way to study people. You got the survey, the questionnaire, and then you have a case study. And a case study is when an individual who has suffered from particular psychological illness participates in a continued interview with you. And by asking questions and studying this particular person with depression, you're able to see the contributing influences and everything that's related to a person with a particular type of depression. You also have a longitudinal study, and and that's just observing people over years or decades. Okay, so, and again, just general overview. The next tile is, boy, this is out of sequence. That's okay. So this study of how and why people change over time. This should have been the first tile. Okay, so the developmental psychology is the study of how and why people change over time. Okay, it's also the study of factors that lead to healthy development. It involves, again, the study of biology, education, psychology, history, sociology, anthropology, and other sciences. I would have to say that biology, sociology, and what I call intellectual development is probably really the focus there on the development of a person. As far as the, we want to keep this on the realm of psychology. Okay, so that should have been a first tile there, an overview of what is developmental psychology, with the study of how and why people change over time, and the study of factors that lead to healthy development. Okay, so the next tile may be tile number 2. I don't know why they're out of 3. Okay, see the 3 domains: biosocial, the brain, and the body. Okay, as it relates to social influences. Us as a physical self, okay, is going to have abilities and contribute to our ability to interact with other people, okay, according to its physical structure. Okay, then you got cognitive, which is how we think, how we perceive things, the language that we can use, okay, the education institutions that are teaching us, and of course how we process that information. And the psychological has to do with emotions, personality, interpersonal relationships. A lot is missing from there. The spirituality. You won't find psychology talking about spirituality. But when we're looking at developmental psychology, we're looking at it as the biosocial, because a 2-year-old cannot interact equally with a 30-year-old. There's limitations on the 2-year-old to have interaction with a 30-year-old. Okay, so we're moving on to the next tile, and I'm running out of tiles because this is just a basic overview. Should change. Ecological perspective. Okay, none of us are on an island, developing into a human being. We're in neighborhoods, we're in schools, we're in family units. Sometimes the family is a divorced family, one family unit, another family unit. So when you're looking at developmental psychology, one of the groups that contributes to our development is what is known as a microsystem. Okay, and that's the immediate social setting, like a family, a classroom, a peer group, or a work group. From that is a mesosystem, and the mesosystem is what links a family to a classroom, or family to a peer group, or a family to a work group, or peer group to a classroom. Either way, is what links this. The it's like your teacher. You'll interact with your teacher. You'll interact with your child's teacher, and of course, your child's going to interact with the teacher. Okay, so that link there, it would be a mesosystem. Then you have the exosystem, which is the neighborhood and communities, which are structures that affect functioning of a smaller system, for example, all media. This is outside of ourselves. This is not in the classroom. This is not in the family. Okay, even though you get media in the classroom, okay, this is the when you're at home away, okay, the information coming outside from television stations, from radio stations, from newspapers, from magazines. Okay, so we move on to the next. See what's there, and that looks like an ending tile. Oh, now you have a macro system, okay, which is the culture, the politics, and the economy. And as I teach or tell people, about how we formulated our ideas of negative, how we get the negative ideation, and how we become cynical and skeptical, and how that harms us, okay? The information they're getting It's coming from the microsystem, the mesosystem, the exosystem, and the well, waiting for the next, and the macro system. That's where we're getting information. We as individuals, as developing individuals, are getting information from our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, and our sense of touch, and also from spirituality. Okay? And that information can be presented in a negative, or it can be presented in a positive manner. And we start to formulate attitudes. And what I have noticed in the modern world, a lot of pain and suffering is due to having been brainwashed to the negative. And the brainwashing comes from the family, comes from the parents, brothers and sisters, comes from the schools, comes from what we watch on television, on movie, what we see in movies, what we listen to on the radio. Rather negative information from the neighborhood, from the community, and that all contributes to our attitude about life. And what contributes to our mental health, what contributes to our pain and suffering is those negative attitudes. Now, you have obviously the biology, our brain can be our worst enemy. We could have been a victim of abuse. We can experience stress, failures, disappointments, and to the extent that they affect our psychology, that they lead to illness. Okay, we can experience trauma like abuse, or somebody tries to kill us, or rape, and that will contribute to different types of psychological illnesses. So here we're seeing the beginnings of contributing influences to our personality dynamic. Okay, let me see what my next time is. Cohort is a group of people born roughly at the same historical time within 5 to 10 years. You could even call it a peer group. Okay, we're social animals. We learn through social interaction. And the other ones, we're talking about groups. Here we're talking about individual influences. Okay, and we can have cohorts. We can also have an ethnic group of people who share the national origin, religion, culture, and language. Most people hang out with theirs, the same type of people. If they're a white Caucasian, they hang out with white Caucasian. If they're African American, they hang out with African Americans. Okay? And of course, these groups have their influence because of their shared behavioral patterns, personality patterns, and values. Okay? It's reinforcing, sometimes I say it's reinforcing the negative. Your friends will speak a certain language and you'll just parrot that language. And you'll speak a certain language and then your friends will parrot that language. Everybody's in agreement, so nobody is in conflict. Okay? It doesn't necessarily mean that what you're learning, what you're talking about is good. Okay? You can be teaching each other bad values and bad behaviors. So moving on to the next tile, and I'm waiting for it. Okay, individual influences too. It is understood, or it is believed, that the neighborhood you live in, okay, your economic status, and unfortunately, people with very little education, and not that much money, have a lot of stress, struggle, suffer, and that stress is loaded up onto children. I did a parenting essay before I realized that I was going to do this project, and the focus of that parenting video essay on YouTube is a lot of the mistakes that parents make that lead to anxiety and depression in adults, and they acquired it as children by interacting with their parents in the manner that their parents interacted with them. Okay? And poor families, not by rule, I'll find you some parents don't have ways with. Okay, so moving on to the next tile, hoping that it works. 3, not really theories of development. There's been an argument, I don't even have to read the tile, I know this, when you go to psychology, you get into this, are we born knowing things, or are we born not knowing anything and learning as we go? Outside of spirituality, I do believe that God exists, and I do believe the Holy Spirit is there to help us learn. But outside of spirituality, outside of religion, as individuals, I believe we're born as a blank slate, and we're learning as we go. And with the argument, it's always been called nature versus nurture. Nature is how you're born. Nurture would be what you learn. Okay? So there's a theory that says that it's nature, that you're born with certain physical structure, and in your genetic code, there's information, and even though you didn't have exposure to it, you know it because it was passed on to you by your parents in your genetic code. Nurture just means you're experiencing your environment, you're learning, and that's where I would go. Third thing right in, it's sort of like, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We're born with some genetic code that gives us information, how to change a bicycle tire. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in the genetic, I don't believe in the gene of alcoholism. I don't. I believe that there's a gene for homosexual behavior. I think that's misguided science. Okay? But the third one is that it's a little bit of nature and a little bit of nurture. Okay? One of the theories that and it's not a theory, it's actually a fact. So it would have to be a law of human behavior. Imagine a baby, little baby, first day on planet Earth. Ears work, eyes work, nose works, mouth works, and the nerves in the skin, the sense of works. Just because you're not in the presence of the child doesn't mean that the child isn't, experiencing environmental information. Okay? So the child can hear. And if the child can hear, those words can be registered in the brain, okay, in the memory parts of the brain. So you have this little baby that's left. Let's say mom and dad go into the kitchen, leave little baby on the sofa in the little carrier so it doesn't fall. They left the television on, and little baby is seeing what's on the screen. Little baby is hearing what's coming out of the speakers. The little baby is smelling what's in the room. Little babies like to put things in their mouth or taste something. And if you've seen little babies, they sort of rub their feet together or they hold their feet. And the point being is as a day one old baby, they're putting information into their memory. Now, the question that has to be asked is, do they have to understand the words in order to memorize them in the average? No. They can just hear them. They can just see and put it into memory, have no awareness of it, don't understand any significance of it. They're listening. And this is implanting information into the memory that later on, when they grow up, they're going to experience something and say, well, this is just very familiar. I don't remember ever having anything to do with this. Why do I know this? And the reason they knew it is because when they were little, okay, they saw and heard on the television or saw and heard conversations. Just because you leave the little baby alone doesn't mean the baby isn't absorbing information and putting memory information into the memory parts of the brain. Okay, so when part of the brain. Okay, so this is of nature. We have something in our in our genetic code of information, understanding about how to balance, and I don't agree with it. I don't think there's any genetic transfer of intelligence. I don't. Nurture, I believe that environment teaches us a lot. Most of what we understand comes from our environment. I don't believe that it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Okay, people are welcome to if they want to believe, I guess. So I'm waiting for the next tile because this system is sort of slow. And where am I going to end up? Okay, so okay, continuity of theories. Okay. Ironically, this will lead into chapter 2, because I was reading chapter 2 that has to do with theories of human psychology, like cognitive psychology and Freud psychology, which is psychoanalytic psychology. And everybody has an opinion, okay? Continuity just means that we move through, stable stages of growth. You've heard of the terrible twos. I know that there are stages of growth, but it has more to do with intelligence, intellectual growth, and emotional growth. I'll explain that later. Of course, discontinuity just means that instead of being able to say from 0 to 2 years, this is what the child will be. Some normal flow, we can chart it 2 to 0 years, 2 to 4 years, 6 to 10 years. For some people, it is that way. Okay. For some people, it may take 0 to 3 years. Okay. When I did that parenting essay, I mentioned that, and I mentioned this earlier, a little kid really doesn't have the language understanding, the vocabulary that a 25-year-old parent has. And that needs to be understood because biologically, they're not able to hold a lot of words in their memory. And when you're scolding a child and telling the child that the child is stupid and doesn't understand, the child isn't stupid, but the child does not understand. Because they don't have the memories, the information that you're working with. So you're literally scolding a child for the child not knowing what is the correct behavior. Okay? And that has a lot to do with the physical self. Little children have difficult time handling the objects because of their size, their physical maturity. Okay, they have to develop, and as they develop, they're able to do more with their feet and their arms. Okay, they're able to run better, and the body itself contributes to mental development. Okay, and we're limited as small people because of the brain that we have. The vocabulary that they have, the understanding that we have, the intellectual information that we can hold, okay? And the body, since we're social animals and we learn by being social animals, the body is contributing to social interaction, social growth, okay? And you know, you have to understand that you may be asking more of a 4-year-old than a 4-year-old can actually do. That's the continuity, discontinuity, and especially the biological and the social. You have a growing child, and the child is learning as the physical body allows it to learn. Oh, right. Okay, so have I lost this completely? I'm still waiting. It seems like it's catching up. Ugh. Okay, so here we are back. So that's the close right there. That's it. I believe in review. This really doesn't need to be reviewed because this is just a general understanding. If you were going to pick words to know from this first session, okay, scientific method would be something to know. The 5 steps in the scientific method would be something to know. Okay, naturalistic observation, of course, you would need to know what is correlation. Correlation is important to know because when you're doing science research, okay, what you're literally saying is that X will lead to Y, okay? And of course, you got to be careful that just because X and Y exist in the same area doesn't necessarily mean that X causes Y, all right? And if you're going to put on your notebook, knowledge. When you study people, it's important to know that there are experiments that you can do. There are surveys, 20, 30 questions you can ask per illness. You can study people over time. That's longitudinal. So an experiment would be something you want to know. Survey, something you would want to know. Case study, longitudinal study would be something you would want to know, have on your notes. If you were going to take a test, I'm structuring this. This is just a conversation, exchange of information to help individuals understand why they're feeling the way they are and why when they try to do things different, try to make changes, they're encountering resistance from themselves. Okay? And in understanding developmental psychology, you would want to know that developmental psychology is the study of how and why people change over time, and also the study of the factors that lead to healthy development, which I'm only going personally. I am going to. Well, I'll do this later. But personally, spiritual, biological, emotional, okay, and intellectual. That's the 4 divisions that I would give to human growth and development. But there's other contributing factors. To say, well, we interact. The personal relations, they relate to emotions, okay? And then I'm just gonna stop this little review. I went ahead and and of course we exist in different groups, and those groups influence us. A microsystem, which is the family or the classroom or a peer group. We have links between them, okay? Those are mesosystems. And an exosystem is the information out of a microsystem, which can be the news media, okay? Media in total, okay? And then let me move on and close this up in my summation. Of course, you have your macro system, cultures, politics, economy. A lot of that influences us. You know, I am involved a lot in politics, not as far as writing and doing video essays and paying attention to what is going on. And it definitely influences the development of personality, but it's even a source of stress. And the reason that I'm doing this videos is for people okay? So when we're outside the group, when we're interacting with people, with friends, okay, we have cohorts. Sometimes our cohorts can be of a particular distinct ethnic group, okay? And that has power because behavior mind what neighbor, what career ladder our parents are on, that has an influence. And then we'll go through this is the nature, okay, nurture, okay, that's, I more than explained that, I don't need to review it, okay. So here we go, and of course the continuity, discontinuity, the stages. Continuity is just stages, you know, that can be measured, don't change, 0 to 2, 2 to 4, no problem. Discontinuity, you know, sometimes some children is 2 to 4 years, they learn what a 2-year should know, and some people it takes them 0 to 3 years to learn what a 2-year-old should know, okay. And of course, as our body is developing, we're able to learn more, we're able to do more, we're able to interact more, and we're able to learn more about, you know, what information we should have to manage our way through society, okay. Our biology interact. Is there a normal, a typical case? No, because nobody's the same, all right. So let me see if I can get to the end of this, because this is annoying me. I keep hearing me say this, it's annoying me. Okay. So here's the first session of developmental psychology. Again, this is an effort to help people understand here, just in this session, you should be seeing how your attitudes were influenced, why it is you behave in a certain way, why it is you get along with certain people, okay? And we don't like to hear it, but if we're struggling, we're overloaded with pain and suffering, and we have depression or anxiety, we want to help ourselves walk away from the negative and walk towards the positive, look forward to what's good, pay attention to what's good in life, train ourselves to enjoy a 24-hour you know, cycle with simple healthy pleasures of life. Then we can use this information. See, it should start, you know, it should start clicking that, okay, now I see why my personality is the way it is. My parents yelled at me a lot, if that was the case. And, you know, I'm not afraid of mentioning worst case scenario, because I believe there's hope for everybody. I believe that, I know that the majority of our complications, depression or anxiety, come from how we interpret events. Other people may have hurt us, but we're the ones that define those events as important, as significant. We're the ones that let those events us if life is good or bad. Experiencing, you know, even the worst that can be imagined, for me, doesn't take away the beauty of life. And we can stop focusing on the negative because of what happened, and we can start focusing on the positive. I firmly believe that. If you ask me what is the road to good mental health, I would tell you walk away from the negative, walk towards the positive. Believe in yourself. Do things that are good. Stop attacking yourself with a negative inner voice. Yes, the negative inner voice has a place because it, here it's telling you more or less how that negative inner voice could have developed. Acted with people who spoke the negative voice. Your parents were not up to being parents, and they were part of negativity. Yeah, a simple of how our attitudes formed, why we don't have confidence, why we don't have good self-esteem. And I'm telling you that you're in charge and you're in control, and you can start thinking positive, and you can think yourself happy if you will focus on it, and you will pay attention, dedicate yourself to what's good in life. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to have to be patient with this project, but I do plan to complete it and complete what I call, I'm going to have to count these books. I'm saying it's 50 courses, but I will complete it.